Okay, today it's not really an install video per se of the power steering from Wicked Belt to Unisteer, because I was having to learn how to do the Maverick when I was doing my own. So this is more like a guide that'll go along with the printed instructions. Mine's already in. Just a good point while I'm thinking about it is you can look down between the steering wheel and the dash. You don't see any of the power steering hanging below. It's not, it's up under the dash. It's a clean install. Alright, the instructions basically told us when we got started to get your stock steering rod off is to come up underneath here and remove the pinch bolt in the stock system here. And then once you do that, you can pull the steering wheel backwards, and that'll pull the steering shaft here out of the U-joint there. And then of course you got to take this panel off here, which is just a couple of screws and some push pin, but then you go down to the steering rack and take loose the pinch bolt here and then slide it out, and then you can take the whole shaft out. I believe I took mine out the front here. Okay, pretty easy to do actually. And I apologize for the movement, kind of doing this by hand. It's hard to do it on a tripod. But then once you do that, you take the motor assembly with the upper shaft, short shaft on. You need to follow directions. Some of these, and I can't remember now, some of them, I believe the ones on the motor, I know the one on the steering rack have what they call a missing tooth or a blind tooth, and you need to make that alignment. But this is kind of more, like I said, a guide. But you attach with no bolts, of course, which I need to tighten that one up. Put this shaft here, slide it up on this, and this is a hard part. I'll be honest with you, it's pretty tough to do, but to swing it up underneath, and this factory rod up in here, square tube, this plate, got 4 bolts on it, okay, and you gotta hold it in place and put these 4 bolts in, and it's pretty tough to do, and you may say a few dirty words, but basically you get those started, you leave them loose. Once it's hanging in place there, then you take your other rod that goes from your steering down to the front end, and I shove mine through the hole here, and I put it on the missing tooth or blind tooth on the front. Tried my best to get my steering wheel straight as I could with my front tires, and with the movement left in the motor, get the bottom U-joint on, okay? And then once that's all in place and all these joints are loose, then you can position your motor, and it pretty much positions itself. Tighten them up even, don't go crazy on one, but tighten them up. And then once those 4 mounting bolts are done, you can tighten up all of your U-joint pinch bolts. Alright, and those are, I believe on this rack, they're going to be 1/2 inch on all of them. Okay, so once the unit's in place, there's just a little bit of wiring to be done. Unisteer likes you to solder some of the wiring. Now, everybody didn't have a solder gun, and I understand that, but there's no better joint than a soldered joint. One of the places or wires that they want you to solder, I didn't. So we'll kind of go through this, and again, I apologize for all the movement. Alright, you got to have a keyed hot wire. Alright, so you pull your panel, your front access panel, or whatever, control panel, whatever you want to call it, away, and the black yellow wire on this end of the ignition switch is keyed hot. Alright, that's the one we're going to tap into. But what we also want to do with that exact same wire is hook it up to our light in the dash. So what I did is I drilled my 1/2 inch hole here. I ran my red wire out. It's the same wire, goes from the hot to the light, from the light to the box, so the light's kind of in line with it. And I pulled the red wire through. Of course, it's looped. Cut it, skinned it back, soldered it into 1/2 of my light, and then there's an orange wire that goes on the other side of the light and I soldered it in, used a heat shrink, pushed it back through, and then that gave me the slack to come over here to my orange black on the switch. And like I said, in the instructions they have you solder it, and I probably should have, but I had these little T-taps and a little spade connector I used here. Alright, so there's also 2 wires that are troubleshooting wires that you will not use, so they'll tell you in instructions just put the terminals on them there for troubleshooting later. Alright, then that just leaves the heavy gauge wire, which is going to be the red and the black. And I ran mine up under the dash, come through other side, wire tied it off, and come out here, which would be under the armrest or engine cover area. Okay, mine hadn't been, installation has not been cleaned up, but you can see here's the red, the hot, and the ground. I run it up underneath the tunnel, back to the battery. I took my top piece of my bed off here, where I could access the top of my battery easily. It comes with a loop for the ground. Put it on a wire, ground it. What I did notice, these screws are really short in the battery, but I've got enough grip. Like I said, there's an inline fuse that comes with it, and I connected it to the hot side of the battery. I believe there's a connection. Well, I can't. Yeah, there's my connection for this. I soldered it and then soldered them down there, so you basically get some extra wire to make your length. Okay, and that's kind of the electrical connections. It's pretty simple. Now it's a pain in the butt to get it all mounted, but nonetheless, it'll take you about 2 hours or so to do this. But let me give you a demonstration to how it does. Now I've got my finger in here and I'm holding this iPad as a camera, and I'm pressing down and I can't hardly turn. I'm barely able to turn the steering wheel. Okay, now when you turn your key on, your light comes on and then it'll go out, and that'll signify it's working when it comes on and out. Now I'm going to take one index finger and turn it, just that easy. One finger. Like I said, it's almost like the front end's jacked up, which is not. As you can see, I'm on the floor of the shop. So anyway, that's like I said, that's a quick down and dirty install of the Wicked Built power steering. Well worth the money. Thank goodness the price is lowered some. 3-year warranty on it, made in the USA, good company to deal with. If you have any questions on this power steering install, feel free to give me a call. Also, there will be 2 different power steerings, and one's if you have a stock steering rack, and the other one is if you have the Rackzilla. So we'll need to know which one you have, and vice versa. If you ever buy a Rackzilla and you have their power steering already, we'll have to know that, because shafts come with both pieces. Anyway, got any questions, give me a call.